Hi, this is Chris and welcome to The Compulsive Hobbyist. In my last video, I had started the process of setting up a backing track for what will be essentially a cover version of Cake's The Distance. I picked this song because it's a fairly straightforward song to play. There's only a handful of parts, and some of those parts are fairly simple, at least on the surface. The guitar part, which is what I'm working on now, really only has three sections which repeat. And if you're just looking at the fingering, there's really nothing that's all too difficult about it. It's pretty straightforward. But when you start to actually try to play it straight through correctly, it's a little trickier than it necessarily appears on the surface. And this video was supposed to be me recording and mixing in that guitar part before I move on to the other instrumental parts. But I've realized that I actually need to put in a little bit more work than I thought into actually getting halfway competent at this part before I record it in a single take. And fortunately for me, I do have an excellent guitar teacher who I've been working with for the last year and who has graciously agreed to allow me to record my lessons with him and bring some of that into these videos. Scott Tournet is, in addition to being an excellent guitar teacher, a very accomplished and experienced musician, performer, songwriter, and recording artist. His current band, Electric Voodoo, ELEKTRIC, is a festival band. I believe it's an 8-piece. They do really good stuff, sort of a world beat sort of mix. Really cool music. Scott is also a solo recording artist. He writes, performs all the instrument parts, records, mixes, and releases solo tracks, and I believe he has some more coming out shortly. And that's something that is really interesting to me as a student, not just because he's a really good guitar teacher, but also because he really has experience and a deep personal interest in so many aspects of what goes into music production. And I try to learn things the hard way by picking complex subjects and trying to learn all the different aspects of them together, which isn't necessarily the best way to learn, but it's how I learn. And that's kind of why having somebody like Scott as a teacher who is perfectly happy to jump around from guitar to bass to recording to mics and mixing and whatever happens to be my topic of interest of the week, he's perfectly game to jump into. So I thought it might be fun to bring some of my lesson in, not necessarily the entire thing, but just the parts where we're talking about, specifically about the playing of the distance guitar part. And you'll see that even though, as I said, it is a fairly straightforward part, there is definitely some room for improvement in the way that I'm playing it. And hopefully you'll get something out of that back and forth that goes into trying to learn a part from somebody who has way more experience than me, but also I think probably hasn't really worked on this song before we started looking at it a week or so back.
So let's get it back to the cake, it's going to be,
Oh yeah, I take it back. There is some vibrato there, huh?
there can be, exactly. And so with that, it's like, I find that is like throwing a ball into the air, and you're throwing it like, like I'm teaching my kid how to catch or whatever, and it's like throw it this high, then you throw it that high, and then you throw it, and you keep on kind of pushing your limits in a way of you know, and then you get to that point where you like throw it way the hell up there and you can still catch it. And to me, that's the same process as this. It's kind of like seeing how much control you can kind of put over that process. And that's going to be, you just kind of got to do it 20 times in a row. So it's like that, like throwing the ball in the air, you know, kind of the same concept. Yeah, and then sometimes getting even more playful with it, so you're not like doing, because yeah, it's like, okay, I did it 6 times, I'm kind of bored, you know. It's like then you can kind of, you know, kind of different things. And so hit it from this side, hit it from that side, to the point where you're like, I know where that goddamn E on the A string on the 7th fret is in my heart, you know? Because I bet you before this guy from Pink wrote this riff, I bet you he's played a lot of. He's done a lot of that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's all there. It's that. So it's a you know, he probably had that memorized before he wrote the riff in a way. So yeah, so just, you know, that's something to tackle this riff, but also getting comfortable in a really sweet spot on the guitar, and also kind of doing some vibrato, but in a way, so it's like, yeah, start with this riff, but then like see some other fun things that you can do with that, you know, because that's also a cool place to play on the bass too. You know, when you get into it. You know, that's like a kind of a classic bass area too. So when you pick up the bass, it's like, oh yeah, there's that sweet spot on the 7th fret. I don't know about you, but my instrument gets worn on certain frets way more than the others. For me, like the 5th and the 7th and the 12th fret are like heavily worn, you know, because it's like key of A, key of E, you know?
Yeah. Well, not yet. I don't quite have the mileage yet. I'll throw the loop on just to try to get myself to full speed, which I know is not the way I'm supposed to be doing it. I'm supposed to be starting slow, but whatever. We'll try it this way.
Sometimes you got to jump in the deep end.
Back to the, yeah, it's then you're hammering it on here.
That next part. do. That's how I would play it in this weird way, because like it's kind of weird. It's hard to come back to that. To me, that's easier in a way because I have more control.
So where are you playing that?
It's like, so instead of playing this,
the
open one, I'm playing that here. It's the same thing. I'm not doing it off the top. I'm only doing it on that resolution. So it's like,
oh, okay. Okay.
You know, because it's I don't know. I just have more control over that. But as opposed to that with the two strings out, right? So I don't know. That's the only 2 cents of like that might make it a little easier. But really beyond that, the main thing, you just need to play it more, you know. And I know you've already played it a lot, but the other thing, you just gotta try to keep relaxing while you do it, you know. Because I know it's hard because it's at this tempo, and you need to like. It's hard to say like, you know, because I tell this to my drummer all the time. It's like you need to like hit the fills with enough force, but you also need not to speed up through the fills, you know. So that's that tricky balance beam kind of act that you're doing, where it's like you need to be moving with the tempo, but you also need to kind of be like breathing out and making sure that all these muscles are kind of like loose enough, because, you know, it's a lot of intricate stuff. And if I'm not playing that with like kind of enough looseness, I'm going to get tightened up on that. And then, what is it? Is that it?
There's like a quarter note bend there.
Okay. Yeah. That's a tricky little run there. Is that it?
I think you got it.
I'm trying to think the best fingering. That's about right for me. But how are you fingering?
I think the only thing I'm doing differently is I'm shifting my index finger up here, whereas you're doing.
Got it.
But
yeah, both are right? Fine. Yeah. It's just finding your comfort level. Yeah. This is a great freaking learning riff, man. I'm gonna have to teach this to somebody else.
It is.
It's like it's really working a lot of shit, you know. It's like 3 distinct parts that are. It's hard to get back to this part.
Yeah, and you got to do it like this because it's a single guitar part. So yeah. And this is also where the aim comes in, because not only are you shifting the parts, but you're shifting down, and you got to nail those 2 strings without fumbling it.
I kind of am interested to. Have you searched any videos of them playing this live and seen him visually do it?
I found a video, but I wasn't really looking at the guitar part, so I'll have to go back and look. And I'm not even sure. I think the original guitar who originated this part isn't with the band, so it may have to be reaching back
Really?
away. I think so. I
I'm
could
pretty
be
sure it's
wrong about it. Because he's gone through
that blonde.
multiple.
I thought it was that tall blonde guy was like the guitar player forever in that band. But maybe
sure.
I don't know. I'll have to do a little recon. We played before them on some festival in Kentucky, and that was probably in about 2012 or something like that. 2012, 2013, and it was like this kind of like tall, you know, like your height, like blonde dude, and he was playing I think a Gretsch or a Guild.
I think he,
you know, semi hollow, and through like a Tweed Deluxe or maybe like a Bassman or something like that, you know. And that was like, I remember looking at his board and just being like, yeah, there wasn't much to. It's like he just has that sound and it's awesome. It's really like kind of boxy but like mid-rangey, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I mean, I think if you want to analyze any of the stuff, I'm happy to. You know, I think, how are you feeling about your hand position? Feeling like,
I think since you kind of pointed out that I was kind of like freestyling a little too much last time, and I've been trying to keep my palm kind of grounded on the bridge here a little bit, and I think that's helping. It's helping me to kind of lock in a little bit better. Not that I'm really locked in, but lock in a little bit better on the. But one thing I do feel like I'm flubbing multiple things here, but one thing I'm still struggling a little bit with is cleanly muting here, because if I do it slow. But when I'm doing it fast, it's half the time I'm missing the muting, and half the time I'm overdoing it and I'm hitting the strings.
yeah. The thing that I could suggest with that is less is more.
Okay.
You know, in the way of like, you don't, to mute a string, I mean, it's like, look at this. It's like you barely need to like be touching the string. So, you know, I think just try to be lighter on the mutes if you can. Like, yeah. So your picking hand is fine. I mean, you can still kind of, but this hand doesn't need to come down that hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it also, remember, try, you know, again, this kind of comes with that same idea of economy of motion. So when you go, you know, the further up here off the strings you come, the more, probably the harder you're going to come down, and the harder it is to get your timing really solid. Because it's kind of a funky, because to do that, you know, this is rhythmic as well as this, you know? So both of your hands at that point, it's like playing drums together. So it's like, so when you do it, let's look at like, how far is my hand coming off? Minuscule.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, that just makes it easier, because I'm like right there. You know, my timing's going to be better, and I'm not going to be coming down on the mute as hard.
Makes sense.
So I came off a little more. I was kind of overemphasizing it to prove a point. But when I want to like get into the mode of that song and get the stink, you know. You know, so that's the thing. It's like, it's tricky. There's a lot of moving parts. So it's like, get super into these things microscopically, you know, analyze them. Then you need to kind of like pull back and feel the drums and feel the groove. And you need to be breathing out, relaxing all of your muscles. So it's this delicate dance of kind of all these things simultaneously.
And you
that's
need
the
to be able
tricky
to make
part.
those fast changes while still being into the groove and having the light touch, but being ready to jump up to this part and that. Yeah, it's
So that's why it's good to take elements of these things one at a time. So it's like, look at, like, focus. Just do that for a little bit, cut it up into little sections.
I'm seeing that, and I'm also seeing there's a parallel to like when a couple months ago when we were playing around with the funk stuff, and I was struggling with integrating the wah because it was a little bit like juggling and chewing gum. When in reality, it's muscle memory. You just gotta do it till you get it right.
Yeah, well, let's break things down into little manageable things, like what we did with the riff last time, right? We went. Then you put it together. So it's like you can do that. You can chop it up into as many little pieces as you need. When I'm learning like a new song or a complex melody, not even complex, but like I have to break it down into like 4-bar segments, and really, we're all different in how we memorize. But for me, I'm a meathead, and I need to like over it and over it and over it. I do the same thing with memorizing lyrics. It's like I need to just go over those 2 lines until it's like there. Then I can move on to the next 2 lines, So I think look at it that way and try to segment it in a way that it's like, now I'm working on this and only this. Now I'm working on this. Now I'm putting them together. And then at a certain point, now I'm performing it, Now I need to like switch off a part of my brain and try to like trust the process that I put in the work and magnified all those little pieces of it. And now it's time to relax and breathe and try to play it in a, performative like way. And, for me, whenever I'm like, the other thing too, like where it can get really interesting and cool is like where you've got it in your DNA well enough that now you're actually listening to the other parts in the song as you perform your part. Usually the first being the drums, but like when I feel like doing well and playing well or recording a great part, it's because I'm actually playing, but I'm listening to the other parts of the song. It sounds basic, like we should always be doing that, but that's not what most of us are doing.
I got to imagine that's critical. I mean, so for what I'm doing is the simplest case because I'm playing against an established track. It's never going to vary, and I'm just trying to do the exact same thing. But you play in jam bands type scenarios where it's never going to be exactly the same, right?
That's the whole point. Yeah, at that point, you really need to listen. But like even in a situation that you're in, I'm in that as well, where I'm recording one track at a time most of the time. So I am playing to a predetermined, pre-recorded thing. It might be my own performance of something. But so I think the first thing to always shoot for is the drums, and the drums are really cool on this song.
Mm-hmm.
So like do all this stuff we've talked about, but then try to perform it for a while where you're breathing loose and really like focusing on the drums and the feel of the drums, and let that kind of guide you and propel you in a way, and play off that vibe. And that's going to help your vibe of playing it. And it might also take you out of your own head a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Food for thought. And then it's like you can do the same thing with other elements, if you want to. I mean, you can kind of focus in on the bass for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
And again, these are going to be multidimensional things that are it's going to help you as a performer, but it's also going to help you as a listener, as a mix engineer, as a bass player, it's like, because it's good to be able to kind of like I don't know, hone in on one element of the mix.
This is good stuff. I feel like, in my head, I kind of thought, oh, I almost have this part down. I'm going to have this down in a week, and then I'm going to move on to the bass, and then I'm going to. But in reality, I mean, I feel like it could be a while before I get this thing perfect.
Yeah, well, I think cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
It sounds like the past couple weeks have been pretty intense with other things in life.
But even if,
I mean, also like you see me play this part. I mean, it's not an easy part. It's not like Eruption by Eddie Van Halen, I think. So it's like, yeah, whatever. It's a couple guitar parts. It's kind of like pretty involved, That part is kind of hard in a subtle way. That's a hard guitar part, I think. Because it's really like hitting those two strings evenly, and then you're dealing with open strings and fretted strings. I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. But usually, a lot of that stuff I'm doing is on sometimes I'll jump up to the next set or whatever, but it's like that. It's generally always fretted when I come up with a part like that. I don't think I've ever come up with a part that's, like that's a funky thing. That's not easy to jump between those two things. And then these little things are, and then that's hard because you're string skipping at that point.
Yeah, so now, so that jump is, I think I'm starting to get a feel for it, but not necessarily consistently though. Sometimes it's like, okay, I got it down, and then the next time I go to do it, it's just like I'm all over the place. So
yeah, the other thing I was going to say with this one, do the same thing you did with the other one. It's right there. Like that's yeah, it's worth doing that a bunch of times.
Okay.
Because it's a cool jump. The other thing too that I would say is like kind of in the same spirit of kind of like this is kind of cool too, because this is like it's like a lot of awesome riffs are in there, so like that's a pretty classic sweet spot of the guitar. So maybe just be playful a little bit too, you know what I mean? Like maybe even like play a groove, like maybe solo the drums of this arrangement you have, because the drums are awesome just on their own, and then just dick around a little bit like in that area, and get comfy in this area of like, so it's like, because everything besides this stuff, but you could do it with any of the pieces, but in general it's like and just play like a little bit of like loose improvisational stuff in the key of E. I mean, for me, part of like how I got good, was in the beginning I was not good, was I mean, just because of the situation I was in. I had a friend who was kind of crappy at the drums, and we had a drum set in our house, a band house, or the college house we lived in, and he would just be like, do, and play a real like basic beat, and I had a guitar, and there was no bass player or anyone else to, so it was just the two of us. So I just, for hours, we would just be like, you know, and I'm like, and that's also how you're going to get, some dexterity and fluency in that region. So like kind of what I was speaking to before, I bet you this guy played in those areas a whole shit ton before he wrote those parts. Mm-hmm. So he already kind of had a facility leaning in that direction. Whereas you might not have as much of that. So you're jumping in cold on a part that this guy probably ramped up over a long period of his guitar playing life to then create that part. So like kind of consider that, in a way. So like all these things play into like, it's like, it's not gonna, you can't just dive in, sometimes it's like these people have a lifetime to come up with these parts in a way.
Oh, sure.
And so like, it's like me jumping in and trying to like learn a Jaco Pastorius part on the bass or something like that. It's like I haven't been practicing 16th notes, and playing 3-hour club gigs, So like, just takes some of that into account. And this is a way like have fun, be working up towards performing this track and playing it in a way, but in a way that's also like, so you're not only just playing this riff. It's like you're ramping up your skills in this direction and having fun and improvising and kind of working out some other stuff at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how you're kind of subtly getting me back to the loop area too, because you're right. There's a whole world up here that I haven't done a whole lot in, to be honest.
And do it with do it with just a drum loop, because like, as like it's easy to get a little noodly and not be entirely held accountable when you're just playing lead stuff over a predetermined track. Whereas why I think it helped me in that thing I talked about where I was just playing with the drummer is because I didn't have anything to fall back on. I was the only melodic instrument. So it's like, if I wanted to go, and get up into that shit, I had to like, and like I had to kind of check myself. So it's like when I do that, I have to like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and every bar I have to come back and hit that. So therefore, when I'm doing that, it's like then I'm actually, my licks also have to be a bar, So it's like, so that because of that, you're improving your phrasing because you're kind of like held accountable in a way. So that's I think the benefit of sometimes playing with a rhythm, but without any melodic backing will definitely kick your ass. Like being in a duo, or a trio is like, that was like the best I think I've ever been in my, maybe when I was in college, I was in a trio because it was like, there was no bullshitting, it was like, I had no rhythm guitar or keyboards underneath me. It was like every movement had to like make sense and matter or else kind of like the bottom falls out a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So bunch of shit to work on, man, and like I said, this is a hard guitar part, multiple parts. So take it with a grain of salt too. I'm still flubbing some of this part.
Well, that makes me feel a little better. And it actually is kind of fun. I know it's very repetitive, but at the same time, it's, I mean, I've known that this sort of rhythm type playing is something I need to work on. So it's good.
But yeah. And the thing is, it's like once you get some control and facility over this type of playing, it's like it's going to go out over all these other things too. It's not like you're not just learning this song in this part. You're learning a style of playing that's very conducive to improving in a lot of other areas.
Nice. So hopefully you found that interesting. This wasn't meant to be a guitar lesson video, even though it literally is a video with a guitar lesson in it. And I am not trying to teach this song. For that, I suggest you go back and watch Carl Brown's video on Guitar Lessons 365. What this is meant to be is really just kind of opening up about my learning process and how helpful it is for me to be able to sit down with somebody who is way more experienced in the area of both playing guitar, but also the bigger picture of producing and really understanding music. And for me, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, just being able to sit down and chat with Scott. And I think you can see a little bit of that in the video. Because he's got so much experience, not just in the creation and the performing, but also, he really knows the ins and outs of really every aspect of music production, from the writing and the performing and the recording and the mixing and the mastering and all those components, which ultimately, I'm trying to learn through this type of process, in which I hope to share with you guys if you're interested, because both with this song and hopefully others in the future, I really will be touching on some of those areas. And finally, just a note for people who are maybe on the fence about having guitar lessons online, because I certainly was. My first experience with a guitar teacher was, in a kind of a traditional music school environment. This is fairly recently, within the last couple of years. I went to local music shop and started taking very beginner guitar lessons with a local music instructor. And, that's really what I needed at that point in time. But since then, I moved out of state, and with the COVID lockdowns a couple of years ago, that relationship ended, and I tried to go it alone for a solid year, trying to learn from YouTube videos and guitar tabs and books. But I just decided that I needed to have a guitar instructor, because I needed to be able to make progress in ways that I wasn't able to on my own. And I found that through my lessons with Scott, he's had me working on things that I really probably never would have done on my own. And sometimes you need that outside perspective to kind of shake things up a little bit, and make you aware of things that you didn't know that you didn't know. And the other thing I wanted to say really quickly is the fact that most of my instruction with Scott has been online actually has turned out to be beneficial. Again, I was resistant to that at first, but as I'm learning now, being able to record a lesson, which, by the way, I didn't do for most of the year that I've been taking lessons with Scott. And as a result, as you can see in this video, sometimes he'll just throw stuff in that's kind of off the cuff, that I am not quick enough to just pick up on. So he's given me some instruction that, honestly, I couldn't absorb in real time. But now that I've picked up on the fact that, you can record this, it's on a computer, I can go back afterwards and actually study some of those little blues figures that he'll throw in there. And that's really helpful. So if you're resistant, or if you have been resistant to taking online guitar instruction, I'm just telling you from my experience that it can be helpful. It can really be beneficial. Anyways, I will put Scott's information in the description below. You will find all his information about lessons on his website. If you're looking for a guitar instructor, I highly recommend him. And if you're thinking about taking any sort of music lessons, just do it. One thing from my experience is sometimes it does take talking to a couple of instructors before you find somebody who's really the right fit for you. And there's a million great instructors out there. So it's really just a matter of getting out there and giving it a shot. Anyways, if you've enjoyed that, there will be more content coming up. I need to record and mix this guitar part, hopefully in one take, but we'll see about that. And then going forward, I will be working on probably the bass part next, for which I will need Scott's assistance because it's not a simple bass part, and I am a fairly simple bassist at this point. So that's going to be interesting. Anyways, I hope to see you all there, and remember, we're all learning. It's just one of those things that you gotta work through. And the weird thing is, from a signal chain perspective, my setup is pretty straightforward, but once you get a computer involved, you get all these different apps that are hooking into audio in different ways, and then I end up with inconsistent results.
Oh my God! It sounded like a freaking like a Harrison Ford whip or something.
I was just screwing around. So over Black Friday weekend, I ordered the Amplitude full collection. So I'm just getting there's like hundreds of amps. So I'm just. I mean, this is totally the wrong sound, but whatever. It's.
That's pretty fucking hairy.
Yeah, a little too hairy.
I got a cool sound like that on this song that I just finished working on, and I have it on that. It's on my Guild Starfire, so I have the same pickup selector as what you have there. And it's like I have the lead is stereo, but then it's like I just go like this right before the solo, kind of like how the Radiohead Creep is like the. Or how he like smashes it. Mm-hmm. I do that just with the pickup selector, and it's like, and it sounds like a friggin' shotgun click. It's kind of amazing. I was like, I've never gotten that sound before. That's awesome.
Nice.
Because it's like the whole track stops, the drums cut, and then it's just like, get ready for the solo.